The Baltimore Ravens just cannot escape the failure and expectations talk. We talk about that as well as the Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen conversations and comparisons starting up again. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and as an audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, giving you that daily Ravens coverage Monday through Friday, plus some bonus episodes on the weekends at times. We also go live after every single Ravens game and every single piece of Ravens big news. And thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Hope you had a great holiday weekend, 4th of July weekend, and now we're just back in the saddle, right? 1 week closer, or every day is 1 day closer to the Ravens kicking off training camp, which is awesome and exciting, and we have lots to talk about today. In the final part of the show, we'll talk about if we should prefer the Ravens to be favorites or underdogs, right? There have been many years of the Ravens being competitive where they were either the favorites or the underdogs, and they've had more success being one than the other. So we'll get into that in the final part of the show. Before that, in the second part of the show, the Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen conversations and comparisons, those have begun again. There was a segment on that I want to dive into, but in the first part of the show, there was also a segment on the Ravens and these expectations and this failure talk that's going on. So want to dive into that in the first part of the show. But before we get to all that, there's an announcement. I've been mentioning that there's been some stuff in the works about the show, a couple of things I'm really excited about. But one of those things is starting tonight here on the Locked On Ravens channel, whether you're in audio form or video form. We're adding on to the Locked On Ravens media conglomerate, if you want to call it that. It's an addition on, so I want to say, first of all, I want to make this clear. Nothing is changing with Locked On Ravens. I'm still the host of the show. We're still doing 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. None of that is changing. I've been doing this for almost 6 years. This show as a whole, Locked On Ravens, it's not going anywhere, right? It's going to be the exact same thing it's always been. But adding on to that is going to be a live show component to our regularly scheduled programming. So it's called the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. It'll be live either on the Locked On Ravens YouTube channel, or after the fact, you can listen to it in audio form or in video form if you want to. But it's going to be a live show, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays and Thursdays. I'll be on it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be on this thing. And then we're also going to have Jaire, former Ravens receiver and Super Bowl champion, and he's been on this show weekly with me for almost 4 years. And then Sam Njoku, who has been on the show weekly with me for about a year now, and he covers the Ravens. He has his own show, and then he also has covered the Ravens for CBS Baltimore and other outlets. He will be on the show. So it's going to be a group effort, the three of us. We're bringing that to you alongside the regular Locked On Ravens show. Sam will kind of be running point. I will be the local expert on that show, and then Jaire will be the former player on that show. So really excited about it. You know, Sam and I and Q and I have had chemistry for years and years now. Obviously, Sam for about a year, Q for the 4, as I mentioned, but super pumped to get it going. I'm really glad that, you know, Sam and Q are going to be doing this along with me, and it's going to be more opportunities for us to talk Ravens, right? So it's going to be a different component of the show, which I'm really excited about. I love doing the live shows, whether we do it post-game after games or after breaking news. I love interacting with everybody, and I'm excited to bring Sam and Q into that as well. And I think it's a good complement to the regular show that we do here on Locked On Ravens, right? Again, you want your 30-minute, 35-minute dose of Ravens in the morning or whenever you listen to the regular show. Hey, that's staying. That's not going anywhere. But you can also jump in the evening and the nighttime with Sam, Q, and I, and we'll be talking Ravens with you twice a week live, and that'll be really fun. So that's the big announcement. We have a couple more announcements before the season starts, which are exciting. But so be sure to tune in to the squad show tonight and talk some Ravens with us. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. But let's now dive into this. The Ravens, they just can't escape this failure talk. It's all over the place. And, you know, we've had shows over the past couple weeks about it. it's been there for the entirety of the really it's been there for a couple years now. I'm not even going to lie to you about that. It's been there, right? We've talked about it, but it really has started to come back into form once the Jaire Alexander signing happened, because I think the expectations, there's no excuse. If they don't win the Super Bowl, it's a failure, this, that, and the other, if Lamar can't do it here. And I think they're bringing Lamar's name into it, which, I mean, like, as a star quarterback, it's going to happen, but then where is the energy for these other guys? So long story short, on First Take, Kimberly Martin, Damian Woody, and David Dennis Jr., they were debating, for the Ravens, what happens if Lamar fails to reach Super Bowl this season, right? Obviously, there are Super Bowl or bust expectations on the Ravens, as there should be. And Kimberly Martin said, quote, "Every single year, the Ravens find themselves in this position. As a doorstep, they have the best roster. This is a team that I have said for the last 3 years, they have everything they need. The issue in Baltimore is just finish. And if they continue not to finish, it would be a failure because they literally have the best roster. They should win it." And so Damian Woody then responded and said they have to climb Mount Mahomes. If he hasn't done it, meaning Lamar, we're going to be right back here saying the same exact things we've been saying about Lamar Jackson and company. And then he said, "I've always said about Baltimore, it's not complicated. Play the way you play in the regular season, in the postseason." And then Damian was asked, "Oh, well, what do you attribute it to?" And then Damian Woody said, "Sometimes the moments get too big for guys. They do a lot of uncharacteristic things." Mentioned Mark Andrews, mentioned Zay Flowers last season. I'm bringing this up for a couple of reasons, and I'm continuing to talk about it for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm just getting everybody ready, right? Honestly, I'm getting us all ready for what it's going to be this season. It is going to be nonstop. And I said that like the day after the Buffalo game. This is the Ravens' identity, right? This is what they have been, where they've been an awesome regular season team, and then they have not put it together in the playoffs in their biggest moment, and they have faltered. It's a fact, right? It's not fun to talk about. I don't like talking about it, but this is what the Ravens' identity is right now. This is how the league views them. And honestly, it's how the Ravens view themselves, right? We've talked about the messaging from Marlon Humphrey and Odafe Oweh and Lamar Jackson and the coaching staff. Like, everybody sees it. The Ravens, they'll be the first to tell you they haven't performed well enough in those spots. They'll be the first to tell you that they're tired of finishing in places they don't deserve to be finishing in, or I mean, they deserve it, but places they shouldn't be finishing in, I'll say. I mean, Odafe Oweh said pretty much that, where, man, they're tired of that. They're tired of finishing in spots where they shouldn't be finishing. But, we talk about revenge tours every single season, and I've said this on this show before. I'm tired of the revenge tours, right? I'm not here for the Ravens, 8th revenge tour, 7th revenge tour. Why don't, I think the best solution to this is they just win the Super Bowl, so there are no more revenge tours, right? There's nothing to, this playoff loss is lighting the fuel under, the fire and the fuel and all that. They have enough fuel. They had enough fuel last year, being honest. I mean, that Kansas City loss was devastating. But again, what Kimberly is saying here, at least in terms of, they have had awesome rosters. They haven't been able to finish. And again, where I am okay with saying that if the Ravens don't win the Super Bowl this season is a failure because of the roster that they have. But I want that as a team perspective, right? I don't want that to be all on Lamar's shoulders and say Lamar Jackson is the reason this team was a failure if they don't win. Because you can't put it all on his shoulders, right? The Buffalo game is the perfect example of this. He played a major role in them going down early in that Buffalo game. The 2 turnovers, I know there was the miscommunication with Bateman on the interception, and then the fumble obviously wasn't good. But he was the main reason why they were in that game in the first place in the second half. He played great football in that second half for the most part, led a masterful final drive down the field, or, game tying to tie the game possession down the field. I mean, obviously it didn't work out that way because Baltimore couldn't hit on their 2-point conversions, and that ultimately decided to be the difference. They got aggressive on that, and it didn't work in their favor. But again, yes, you can blame Lamar for part of that Buffalo game. He is one of the reasons they lost, but he is not the only reason that they lost. And I think when there are conversations, I'm fine with saying, hey, if the Ravens don't win the Super Bowl this season, or at least get there, it's a pretty big failure for them. Yeah, no excuses for the Ravens unless there is just an injury-riddled season. The no excuses thing is very subjective to me in terms of there could be a lot of things that happen during the season that we just don't know, right? You don't play the game on paper. You play the game, hey, what if the Ravens get decimated again with injuries? And knock on wood, that does not happen. Or what if there's some crazy thing that none of us are anticipating that happens? You don't know that. So the no excuses talk is I get it, but I don't really want to go that far. I would agree more so with, it's Super Bowl or bust for this team right now. And, I think there are a lot of conversations about Lamar Jackson and, going back to Lamar because he is the star of this team. But, he's put in conversations that other guys that they say are on Lamar's level aren't put in, but Lamar's held to that standard and other guys are not. And then they try to put Lamar in conversations with the tier below the guys he's actually up there with. And it's just this two-way street where he's not being treated fairly in the conversations, but he also isn't being respected like he should be. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll continue to dive into the narrative here on First Take, this conversation about what happens if Lamar fails to reach the Super Bowl this season. Plus, we will get into the conversations that are happening right now about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. Now, with the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on things like food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes that all possible. And Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals. There are seat views and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. And the seat views right in the app are great. They're before you buy, so you know exactly where you'll be. And you can literally see exactly how it will look from your seat. Because sometimes you might not be sure. Gametime lets you see that. So take the guesswork out of buying. Take us with Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you, talking Ravens football on this Monday, 1 week closer to training camp, and just super exciting to get back into the football swing of things. Be sure again you tune in tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, on the Locked On Ravens YouTube channel live, or if you miss it, you can rewatch it in video form, or you can listen in audio form. The Locked On Ravens Squad Show with myself, Kadri Ismail, and Sam Njoku. And then be sure you tune in tomorrow for a regularly scheduled 6 a.m. show, which is continuing on. Again, no changes to the regular show. Want to make that clear. We're just adding this other live component on, which again, I'm super, super pumped about. But let's continue diving into our conversation about this failure talk. Would the season be a failure for the Ravens if they didn't reach the Super Bowl? Now, David Dennis Jr. said this about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. He said, quote, "Right now, Lamar Jackson winning a Super Bowl feels inevitable. It feels like something that is bound to happen because of how great he is and how great his teams are. But at some point as the years go on, that inevitability starts to get replaced by doubt." And honestly, I agree with what David Dennis is saying here, because you start to see the same thing over and over again. The same things play out over and over again in different ways, obviously, but the Ravens having a great roster, having a great regular season, and then just not getting the job done. I don't believe in this with Lamar, right? It's not a Lamar-centric thing for me. This is a Ravens thing for me where, I think David Dennis was talking both about Lamar and the Ravens. I just want to keep it to the Ravens because, again, I don't want to put this all on Lamar's shoulders here. But it is true where, the point that I also want to bring up, and this was something that, they talked about on First Take, is that Dan Marino, he was in the Super Bowl in his second year, and that was it for Dan Marino, right? And everybody was talking about, man, Dan Marino has a long time to do this, a long time to win. He'll be back, it's going to be great for him. Didn't work out that way. And I think at some point, that inevitability factor does become a little dicey where, yes, I do believe Lamar Jackson will eventually win a Super Bowl, but you see how the Ravens continuously lose. And yes, part of that's on Lamar and a lot of that is just, it's spread around blame. Lamar's a part of it, but you wonder every year, like, man, does Lamar have enough around him? I think Lamar does have enough around him, right? This is the best receiver group he's ever had, best array of weapons he's ever had on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is absolutely incredible. what happens if the Ravens have another disappointing year? Well, the conversations might shift to, does he have the right coach around him? But if you start cycling through coaches or other personnel, the conversations always find their way back to stars, and not just quarterback stars. That's just the main star positional group, because in this NFL, in this day and age, and honestly, it's not just this day and age, it has been history. Quarterbacks are the ones. Quarterbacks are the leaders. Quarterbacks are the ones to blame in those situations. It will come back to Lamar. But again, was 2023 Lamar's fault wholly, where the Ravens just decided to stop running the ball? Lamar had over 500 total yards in 2019. Working with 2 injured offensive stars as well. Yes, Lamar has blame to go around on his plate. He's not absolved of that, and I'm not trying to say he is. But at the same time, it's the inevitability not about if Lamar Jackson won a Super Bowl, but if the Ravens, including Lamar Jackson, will play well enough in a game in the playoffs consistently to get there, which I think the answer is yes. But Kimberly Martin's argument was, you can't say it's inevitable when you literally every year Mahomes is standing in the way, and now Josh Allen is right there too, and Joe Burrow. I don't get the infatuation with Joe Burrow and the Bengals, by the way. I don't. Look, I get it. They made the Super Bowl. All right. Round of applause. Credit to them. They did it. That's on the resume. That was like 5 years ago at this point. Like, it's ancient in the football world, right? I'm a Nuggets fan, and their championship 2 years ago feels like it's ancient. Like, the Ravens Super Bowl in 2012, 2013 feels like it was a century ago. Like, I'm not worried about the Bengals. I'm not. If you listen to me on the show, you know my stance on the Bengals. I'm just not worried about it. To me, Lamar is also in Josh Allen's way, right? Like, yes, the thing that separates those two right now is that Josh has the head-to-head playoff record against the Ravens, and that is 100% accurate. Like, there's no doubt about it in my mind. That is 100% true. But I think when you talk about it, it just feels like everybody is penciling in the Ravens as like this third team behind Kansas City and behind Buffalo. And if you want to talk about it as, yes, Kansas City has been there, done that. They absolutely have. I'm not going to argue with you on that one. They are the team that both Buffalo and Baltimore have to beat. And yes, Buffalo does have the playoff record against the Ravens. 100%. I'm with you on that. But every year is a new year. The thing the Ravens have to do is prove it, because I do think they have the best roster in the NFL. It's up there with Philadelphia. It's close, but Philly lost a lot this offseason, and Baltimore, I think, gained. So I put them up there. But then there's a conversation about, Josh Allen, and the other conversation on First Take ended up being, who is the quarterback in the better position to reach the Super Bowl right now? Was it Lamar Jackson or is it Josh Allen? And Damian Woody said it was Josh Allen because of 2 things: the division he plays in and the schedule. He mentioned the Bills play only 1 game out of the Eastern time zone this season. The Bills' schedule is very light compared to what the Ravens is. The Ravens have a gauntlet. We've talked about it here. 5 of their first 6 opponents are division winners. It is a brutal schedule. In the division, I don't think the AFC North is as strong as people are making it out to be. I think the Steelers will be competitive. I think, the Bengals will have their offense. They talked about the Browns, like, the Kimberly Martin, I think, said that the Browns are like always in their way. I can't remember exactly what she said. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think she said like the Browns are always a team that gets one up on them at some point, which, last year they did, Jameis Winston, and thankfully he's in the NFC now. I just think the AFC North is a little overrated in terms of, like, I think it's very top heavy with Baltimore, and then Pittsburgh is like there's a gap, and then Cincinnati, there's another gap, and then Cleveland, there's a big gap. So that's kind of where I am on that. And I get it. Like, getting the number 1 seed is a big deal, right? And that is true. Now, this kind of leads into our final conversation about, well, do we prefer the Ravens to actually be underdogs or be the favorites? But David Dennis ended up saying that he just wants to go with Lamar because he wants to go with the better team, where Damian Woody acknowledged that, yeah, the Ravens have the better team, and David Dennis did that as well. And then Kimberly Martin says, well, Lamar's talented, but Josh Allen is able to do special things. And I'm not going to look, Kimberly Martin's a very big Lamar Jackson supporter, right? We've talked about her many times on this show. She comes to his defense Stephen A will say something. Kimberly Martin, no, that's not it. No, that's not. She comes to Lamar's defense. I don't think she was trying to say, oh, Josh Allen can do all these special things and Lamar can't do those special things. I don't think that's what she was trying to say. But when you talk about which quarterback has the better chance to reach the Super Bowl, if this is not a Mahomes year in the AFC, I mean, I will go with the better team in Baltimore, but I mean, they do have to prove it to me here, where, you know, they've proved it against teams like the Steelers and the Texans and all, and, you know, Tennessee, which do matter. Those do matter. And people who say that does not matter, they don't have an argument, because the thing, oh, the Ravens can't win in the playoffs, and then they beat teams in the playoffs. Oh, or they're not beating good enough teams, like, no, pick a side here, pick a struggle, please. But, you know, the teams that they should have circled are Kansas City and Buffalo. But again, they just have to be better in those big moments. It's 100% correct. And that's what we're going to be hearing all season. You know, they're going to win big games, and people are going to be, oh, it doesn't matter because it's not the playoffs, which in the grand scheme of things, sure. Yes. But it also is important to get your momentum going in the regular season. But if you lose in the playoffs, it's all for nothing. So a lot of different conversations about that. And honestly, something the Ravens probably aren't going to be able to escape until they get to the Super Bowl at the very minimum. But coming up in the final part of the show, we'll dive into the favorites or underdogs, talking about where we prefer the Ravens to be. Should they be the hunters or the hunted? Stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher rounding out this Monday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for being here. Be sure, hit that like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form as well. Another announcement, I guess, is we are just a couple subscribers away from 13,000 on the YouTube side of things. So, man, really appreciate everybody who has been a part of the video community, and really appreciate everybody who's been a part of the audio community as well. I mean, we have such amazing communities here on Locked On Ravens. So, hey, maybe when I wake up, we have 13,000 here. And if we already do have 13,000 and you're not subscribed, be sure you hit that subscribe button on that journey to 14,000. Again, we're just continuing to go up the ladder with milestones, and I can't thank everybody for the support enough. Let's talk about the favorites or underdogs conversation. And I'm actually going to put a comment on the video side. I'm trying to pin comments before the show comes out, so you can respond to those comments with like the question of the day. I do polls already, but question of the day on the show. The question of the day is going to be, do you prefer the Ravens to be favorites or underdogs? Now, we know the 2 times the Ravens have won the Super Bowl, both that 2000-2001 season and the 2012-2013 season. They were the number 4 seed. You know, they were not the runaway number 1 seed. The Ravens in 2012 were horrible to end the season. They were awful. Now, they still won their division, but, you know, they kind of limped into the playoffs that year, and all right, well, rookie Andrew Luck, and then they had to play that squad in Denver in the divisional round, and then obviously Brady's Patriots, right? That was the team that they heartbreakingly lost to the year prior, and they got over that hump, played a very talented San Francisco team, and they won. You know, that 2000s team, they played Denver, and, you know, Kaj Ismail talks about his experience all the time, or, you know, they had to go to Oakland and, you know, play in the black hole. And then obviously they beat down on that Giants team in the Super Bowl. Those were not teams like, yes, the 2000s defense was historic, best defense in history, in my opinion. You know, that offense was kind of like, you know, bit of a sputtering offense. You know, Q had some big games that year, but, you know, that offense was not world beaters by any sense of the imagination. And that 2012-2013 team, I mean, Joe Flacco got hot at the right time, one of the best playoff runs we have ever seen. But, you know, you can argue, well, in 2019, that team went 14-2, undisputed favorite that year, right? They took the league by storm, and they're out after the bye. Divisional round loss is the 1 seed. Then you talk about 2023, they get the 1 seed again. And you're like, man, historic defense, offense is humming. This is the year they beat down on the Texans, and then they fall against the Chiefs as the favorites. And then you fast forward to this past year, and, you know, they weren't the number 1 seed. The Chiefs were, but the Chiefs weren't really viewed as the favorite. I mean, the way that Baltimore ended their year and how they beat up on Pittsburgh in the wild card round, you know, Buffalo, those were the 2 teams I think a lot of people consider to be the favorites. And, you know, they again just started slow and couldn't get the job done. So in my opinion, and I want to make one thing clear before here. The Ravens are never going to like throw games for seeding, right? They're going to win when they can, however they can do it. They're not going to punt on games. Now, the guys on the field are going to play to win. The Ravens can make coaching decisions late in the season, like, week 18, for example, to bench guys. And then the guys who go out there to play, they will play hard and they will play to win. But, there's not going to be any like throwing games. I think that the Ravens, they can win as favorites. And the reason I say that is because it's not like they have gotten completely blown out. I mean, 2019 was, compared to the past 2 years, 2019 was a blowout in terms of like the standard. And it wasn't even like that big of a loss compared to other playoff losses we've seen. But past 2 years, they've been competitive in those high stakes games against really good teams. So I think they can win as favorites. And, we really haven't seen Lamar Jackson operate in a quote unquote underdog mentality aspect of it, because even with that Buffalo and Baltimore game, I know a lot of people liked Buffalo, but a lot of people like Baltimore. And so I think it was pretty even, if I remember correctly. I mean, I've tried to like block everything out, but I'm curious to see how that will go. Now, again, I think they would operate really well in there. And I think that honestly, what's going to happen this year, maybe it's a bold take, maybe it's not. What I think is going to happen this year is once the playoffs roll around, people are going to underestimate Baltimore, regardless of the regular season they have. Because again, that's the narrative surrounding them. The narrative surrounding them is they are a great regular season team. But once the playoffs come, they might beat a team dominantly. But then once they get deeper into that postseason, man, they're going to start making those mistakes. They're going to start tripping over themselves. And that is the narrative they have formed. They have formed that, and they deserve that narrative because that's how it has been. So it is up to them to take that next step and prove those teams wrong. So I think that the Ravens will be underestimated come playoff time, not because of the talent they have. People understand the roster is good, really, really good. One of the best in the league, if not the best in the league. But you look at the history during the Lamar Jackson era in the postseason, and, the playbook on them is, man, just force them into some mistakes in that postseason because they turn the ball over a lot and they don't force turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. So hopefully they can flip that narrative this year. Now, the Ravens also have a couple of other things they need to take care of here, one of which is just stay healthy. And obviously, we're hoping to the football powers that be that they will bless the Ravens with some good health this year. And honestly, let's knock on wood for that. The Ravens have been blessed with health these past couple of years. They've had very solid injury years, not really a lot going on there, at least in terms of major injuries. I know they've had little things, but that's been good. They also need to catch their stride. Now, I think that they can survive limping into the postseason. We saw it happen in 2012, but I just think being able to go into the postseason with momentum is really key. The thing with the postseason that's different from the regular season is that it truly is a new season every week in the postseason, right? Like, you can build off momentum in the regular season. Hey, this team's hot, but if you don't catch fire in the playoffs, that's all for nothing. So get it going and keep it going in the postseason. That's what I'll say about that. So my answer, if I had to give one, I would love to see the Ravens as the underdogs, but I think they're going to be too dominant to be considered anything but the favorites. And I think Baltimore has a better team than Kansas City this year. They have a better team than Buffalo this year. But the games are not played on paper in terms of who has the best team, right? We called Cleveland the offseason champs for 5 years in a row or whatever with their teams, and then they went and they absolutely just fumbled the ball there. So I think the Ravens have an awesome roster on paper. They should be favorites, and I think that's what my prediction come playoff time is they'll be up there in that conversation too. But I think that I'd prefer the Ravens to be the favorites just so they can have that as it's another, I guess, achievement in a Super Bowl run to say, hey, we can do this as the favorite. We shocked the world and we proved everybody wrong. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in today to the show. Again, be sure to be back here tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be here. Kadir Ismail will be here, and Sam and Joke will be here. We'll be talking Ravens football, having a fun time. We have a lot of things planned as well. We're going to be working through this, the inaugural Locked On Ravens Squad Show coming up at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Plus, of course, we'll be back tomorrow with our regularly scheduled regular Locked On Ravens programming. So be sure to stay tuned for all that. Hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.